And then just be here back.
I was anything.
Perfect, thank you.
So much. Somehow I'm not surprised.
Yogi? Judges?
Sick.
Okay.
I realized I went on lead that last debate. Pretty funny.
Really, you're a pencil blower.
You know, part time. It's the smoothest of the right injuries. Are you gonna say that's not true?
It's just not true.
Maybe from your side of the location.
Too soon, dude. Too soon.
Fucking useless guy. Shall we?
The advantage of centralized injustice first centralized solar power is inevitable and increasing Jackson. Internal storage is going rapidly 250 quarter rapidly that the price increase by 7% given J economic challenges are very remarkable verifying bad the price decrease trends and oversupply depends on solar process price and certain financial prices are expected to land by 40% by 2050. Mainstream environmental activism is dominated by experts of racial, economic, and gender privilege. This results in violent environmental justice overcoming. It requires decentralized grassroots energy movements focused on interconnections between communities. Favor McCarthy one mainstream environmental organization dominated by white class middle class rather than mechanisms for Republican decision making. The moves gravitated by experts and focus on rights and rather than considering causing climate parties constitution. The privilege increases regard the institution franchise women's who requires grassroots participation in the decision-making process of all experiences actors has often focused on the involvement of disinterested populations to make the grassroots organized emphasize community residents speak and act for themselves as movements committed to battling the disproportionate impacts of pollution in communities. Color code air, for instance, formed in East Austin to address environmental justice potential discrimination related to the location of a power plant. Minority and low-income communities experience disproportionate pollution resulting from centralized energy siting practices. Decentralized solar energy challenges the structure of ongoing violence. Failures in 13 renewable energy can reduce pollution. The environment as community research should then minority communities support very impacts and policy protection as well as these lead to predict the bad process problems of these communities experience higher uses of average for health price low income communities pay a large amount of their income which makes them more vulnerable to energy price. Although the energy price reduce when they are stalled the introduction more green energy can reduce electricity bills. Green economy credit to provide the income solutions significantly slow potential low income urban communities installing solar panels multiple rooftops can be less expensive than individual homes. Environmental injustice outweighs any impact on probability and magnitude. Risk assessments are epistemologically biased towards white male elites who discount the severity of localized environmental hazards and destroying marginalized communities. Bird chicken and six language risk assessment serves to mass and limit social consider the criticism of white men or epidemiological studies gives risk against women, people focus on cancer, some stage birth defects, some example question involving the risk of death and disease. United despite the value neutrality decision should be able to with respect to all political moral consideration on the table. Policy should look to society's most vulnerable developed patients with moral issues. Survey measure risk perceptions white males receive risk much more acceptably. Research conducted regression also all analysis white male that should be highly significant risk test policies bureaucrats large majority of white men acting on attitudes about the risk that women people color do not share that have cross system of environmental protection bias for understanding women people color less power control community color find their mobility limited white men in workplace because they control institutions individuals harbor great fears of terrorist bombing disasters high concentration people kill the local environment that's toxic points Wall Street high concentrations local high peer catastrophe those involved the fear catastrophe Washington possible about dramatic moral statistical threatening hazard all types more harmful more mundane hazard environmental hazard to get weight risk that's local attachment to harmful day Euro community on-site birth effects will debility neighborhood emotions social artists if not ways to ignore this is no risk to the risk involved because localized hazards be unequal distribution the race economic result after takes on profound moral characteristics more than expected number of fatalities possible because local experiences and addressing your problem be society must explore power sharing decision making some call for increases in participation citing decision proposals must incorporate experiences of less powerful people. The system of environmental justice creates disposable populations threatens an emerging apocalypse demands challenging short-term catastrophe focus. Visible violence develops from subterranean structures of inequity mix in discrimination between that's proposed actually point back to environmental reason for the poor that institution not going to be held to check the sin how exposed the seeds of the environmental terror conditions for years later contains legions of upstream community share vulnerability which is hidden by the visible world. There's life on earth people find themselves exposed to radiation pursued by nuclear annihilation is the most effective action technology this day restage environmental time against biopic meteor construction cycle stories being encouraged by temporal space to away from environmental violence which isolate past beneath the radar the military forget the order because of risk falls equally onto backwards communities and focus on underlying structures producing violence that weighs a one-shot linear cause for conflict tender in neither non-linear shapes however the system moving in a certain direction the underlying patterns produce conflicts requires reorientation of focus events to patterns of merger time recognition to events and one object's cause explanation direction to the change that lies behind the events uncertainty and non-linearity are inevitable inherent complexity within systems rumbling at all 8 Complex systems not work in linear fashion. Clear class apertures to the multiple influence linear systems power to be broken pieces each and separately separate items to combine the whole of so much part on the original piece and was a coherent entity important for the outside to understand interaction with real assuming one cosmological neological that the A's and B's only see impact the distinction linear and non-linear contribution debate tools of learning also mindsets of words and complex certain kinds of system future events cannot be forecast on possibly firm prediction others future events can be foreseen to predict part to clarify levels and certainty of looking future rather except rejecting playing out everything the principles to accept inherent uncertainty. Not all predictive policy making is impossible. Entry decision making at the local scale resolves complexity because it facilitates constantly shifting organization. Gilchrist 2008. Theme of complexity is community overarching power social networks part of parallel processing interpreting info with research the who's able to just change conditions compute networks law stuff on without central control voting calculus feel meeting networks are crucial for action relation to social smooth informal like crucial foundation model sex population technology chance not future mission influence policy making times vigility fiction need flexibility communities by helping expand population which with networks immensely capable of responding to positive changes in the environment the actions of the following ideas and resource flow where they best be used empowerment quality can be incorporated complex model of community enabled to underpin a radical social justice. The United States federal government should remove state siting restrictions of community solar power production. Next intention is political scale. The federal government should remove restrictions of states imposed on localities for solar siting to avoid states usurping of decentralized energy production. This empowers communities personally and wide from federal government should have administered the prohibition on state regulation of renewable siting production after renewable energy technology. The power of state government certain local must be limited to their establishing regime of decentralized local third requires federal state power to interfere with all local decision making on the community level differences required faithfully capable to fit the local conditions see small scale limits also last half aggressive organization where the interest through forms of action on work and rescale network communities follow promise to versus charge state government should stay away preference scale promise also preference for state governments can consider suitability to address local land and decisions large energy interests are and then opposed renewables will invest less lobbying at the local level. The transition from centralized energy protection zones, social movements, small-scale organization action, grow more conducive to cohesiveness and longevity, all which are critical to assess the opportunity to match energy policies with prevalence. The communities will increase renewable energy access, chance to find political ground, crucial close press change, land energy rules. The concerns about state authority flow from the ongoing test of business reform, state policy making, the regulatory scale issue, state essentially local consideration, states to double and power local governments. They change course in the future. They manage future action to contribute local decisions about distributed rules. Every uniform state level solution should be precluded. States are precluded by state with policies to create more protective local rules and request energy policy initiated at the state level and to be kind of during local opposition. Failure to account for local concerns, seek local autonomy, the renewable energy may withdraw, making implications even stable the possibility of member state action makes local authority contingent subordinate to local dynamics and stability detrimental the goal of fostering true local experimentation and federal effort is needed the distributed solar panels track low levels of tension from adversaries they make enormous difference again empower community bottom the transition away from centralized require bottom up actions. Community solar energy microgrids prohibited by the states now. The app enables small-scale cost sharing, burning intense small-scale low voltage regeneration between neighbors to drive from energy solar habit and negative impact on the environment. State laws prohibit such arrangements under the laws. Meaning states a homeowner cannot enter an agreement with her neighbor where the neighbor buys excess power. Current state laws prohibit alternative energy microgrids. They decentralize energy production, reduce the need for large-scale centralized panels. They achieve economy scale, shrinking the cost of installation, maintenance, swinging parties, and shifting the scale for energy siting to local fosters grassroots movements that have historically been successful. Towers in 2K, the grassroots movement is defined by scale. Groups while citing proposals, for example, has ways to live into the scale of everyday experience. However, several money. Several of this modern credits marshal in $2,000 able to do when they come to big corporations by citing scale of everyday experience. Environmental justice corporation perpetuate environmental racism. The movement draws response to fair and exciting environments question that happens economic team track where the movement takes local actions that are informed by long-term goals. Radical change citing concepts based for incorporation down environmental scale is socially reduced not ontologically given. They say changes in scale parts sparkle action agents to achieve the scale means to serve the public purpose ignore scales to invite defeat the freeze dreams of opposition by invoking nuclear war do not counter arguments local sovereignty focusing on scale increase organization motivations to pass learning from technical documents actually contribute by drawing upon their experience plan goals environmental justice serve by shooting up the grassroots scale to the accumulation local side of increasing roles in improving environmental quality. Government had the movement to install construction waste on centuries models production methods that reduce toxic output the scale to or even increase the appeal cost rising class. Solar energy site decision making the scale of community is crucial to energy justice in spite of complexity. Miller and 9 house sites cruise energy based inside political economic systems scales where village plan roads for choice about energy attitude risk determine which communities deteriorate the energy system complexity describe choice made by technologies and just their complexity energy choices about what sites want to build around those technologies as critical as her criteria are cost of living and carbon economy the only standards this will require shifts in energy governance energy change should be an opportunity to improve communities procedure site new facilities all after location new strategies needed that enable communities needs urgent given complexity energy change will be fundamental social change solar panels grant freedom to homeowners change population centralized systems panels may impact behavioral patterns consumption change as around the local communities mobilizing selling with gas products for whom and what criteria must approach communities as honest partners energy must engage public such strategies will mitigate towards excesses in the scale of impact calculus comes first injustice persists through an elite scale that trivializes structural violence with global threats challenge this requires your decisions start from the scale of localized solutions the way the policies of energy is framed is key McCann in Luke Picking to define the location of power policy emerge through attempts various frame reality that enable the mobilized look at the politics scale has important material consequences of project loss and not others need to at least go ahead discourse globalization that represents localization of political truth imposed by global scale scale, legitimate zone equals constant intelligence construction, the networks pilot high, networks actually get new scale, fixed into opportunity for new political act, race, framing, affiliate, social redistribution, and governance, the policy intrinsic spatialized framework with the policy reference to one scale policy making scale is disruptive plans cannot engage in political argumentation, waste of trade, because now deal with scalar arguments, and giving credibility to every possible scenario, breaks down rational risk analysis, cast away 80% potential loss in the high degree probability because law, irrelevant law goes to opinion risk ranges, rational never breaks down. We do not know the most serious features that even observed scenarios gain possibility, right chain probability links are vectorable likelihood, eventually said depression possibility, the connection between some alkynos, for it's not from the improbable, yet possible connection flim. Complexity proves the impossibility of linear causal predictions, Hendrick and 9D, realism seeks full surf complexity, theory sees interaction with the system with the surprising states and technological, cultural, and economic systems, other states, each of the interaction incorporates the NGOs, center of observation, linear causal links, outcomes, and multiple causal constant, causing different outcomes, event whole page one another, and ongoing process in which at least inside enemies of public military high superior mode, media flight complex myriad by retraction, Jerusalem predictably in policy transition from complex simultaneous solutions to policy problems and framing is key in energy policy burn, and all in six, sustainable energy seeks to develop conventional energy in post climate change relation technology environmental appropriated by social for the predating and conduct reflection problem social conditions the principally usher few social events little political transformation questions whether the victories in the economic policy balance potential broader gender system change early ground anti-war corporate policy was submitted one of these economy can be sustainably soft pathing for all short the treating victories ready to celebrate the low shadow system creates Benji.
So the plan removes siting restrictions. How do we know the people that are looking for solar energy in those sites can actually afford or access that energy post removal?
Our Bayless evidence as well as our Jackson evidence says that solar production is massively becoming cheaper. Our Bayless evidence says that it cites a study that says that that solar is able to be used by low-income urban communities and has produced tangible
It's able to be used by
change.
low-income urban communities. What does that say about the low-income urban communities' ability to afford this?
I just answered that because that Bayless evidence is it's becoming more and more affordable.
Particularly vulnerable to energy prices and makes a comparative claim that it would be cheaper.
There's also
for
the
them.
energy prices internal to that, which is that decentralized solar will inevitably become sort of a cheaper option because of the externalities.
Decentralized solar will inevitably become a cheaper option because of externalities. Seems like that's a prediction about the future of solar power that relies on a number of economic factors and investors. Why is that linked to complexity theory?
Our complexity argument is not a rejection of predictions or like singular predictions, i.e. forecasting trends about the way that solar markets will occur. It is a prediction of sort of models like DAs, which are like A is the key internal link to B, which is the key internal link to C.
I understand the way you're trying to employ that argument. The question is if your evidence supports this. Your Ronald-Lincoln evidence just says that complexity theory means we have to imbue some frames of uncertainty into this.
I think that's a drastic misreading of our Ronald-Lincoln. He actually even makes that explicit A to B to C to D analogy, which is strikingly similar to the way that disads are read in debate.
Okay, that's fine. I guess I don't really see the bright line with sign. Post the plan. Waste is still dumped on minorities' lands. People don't care about that. What is the broad impact on the environmental justice movement?
What do you mean? What is the? There's not a.
I mean, it seems to me like the people most affected by the plan, renewable energy isn't their primary concern. How do you affect other
Are you asking does the
environmentally based
plan
atrocities
solve
being
all
done to them?
environmental injustice? No, but we make tangible difference in terms of the pollution that communities face. Again, our Bayless evidence is fantastic on that.
Okay, that's fine. So these restrictions that you list, they're siting restrictions, correct? What exactly are these restrictions? How are they codified? What restrictions do you remove? What law?
The Bronin evidence contextualizes. It says that currently states have a law that you cannot sort of join a solar cooperative, i.e. that you cannot build a microgrid in which you are off
Do you know I'm asking what the name of the law is, which siting restriction?
Because there's 50 states that.
Okay, what's the name of the law?
So multiple states prohibited. We have evidence. Use the word prohibited. Not allowed now because the law says that you have to sell energy back to the utility, so you cannot build a separate microgrid.
Okay, that's fine. Your Jackson evidence that says solar power will become cheaper is about private financing.
That's a warrant for why solar power production is inevitable. The evidence makes a prices claim that's independent.
It says that the certainty of renewable markets means that financiers are.
Certainty of renewable markets. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Oh, did you say correct?
I didn't read the last one. The last two.
So you stopped at energy?
Yeah.
Okay.
We judged some fucked up debate for the doubles as well. We judged Juris.
Alright, stop that. I have 934 left.
Good.
That was a great round.
So that was Edmund.
Yeah.
Was Meg. Is that right?
And Leslie Gray.
Oh, that's right. Oh,
That guy was oldest. Gerard's oldest, actually.
What other factor creates a prejudge? JT. It's hard to remember. Didn't we judged it wasn't a double, didn't we judge a debate between UTE and Michigan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's just not.
What topic? Immigration.
Yeah, if he doesn't object to the
Oh,
practice,
yeah,
computer
that's
practice.
That's agreeable.
Alright, the order is going to be 4 off and then case.
Any particular order of things on the case? Put 'em on the scale.
I'm putting them on justice.
I'm gonna split because of that.
Only debate has to vote as an entity though.
Alright, you alright?
The debate is about instrumental defensive topical plan. Usually to be stuck to your plan best to favor A. Probabilistic severance bad makes the debate impossible, allows them to create a moving target. We don't have any stable ground. Also kills advocacy because they don't have to defend the same thing throughout the entire round. Voting fairness and education. Next off. Energy production is generation of power from raw materials, exclude extraction, those heroes, vacancy 628, special review, following subscription stages to extraction encompasses process for production, energy production encompasses process of energy source or transformative power restrictions must be directed. Immediate limitations on production. There's Swami 66 provision operates as a restriction or regulations. Restrictions of truck speed and works. Regulations promoted licensing system will not be. Restrictions for regulatory provisions restricted to final limitation must be real, direct, immediate, not indirect. If the law directly immediately affects it would be a restriction, but indirect repercussions not be considered a restriction. The distinction is fine, but real the test is a direct burden. They don't decrease restriction. They decrease restriction because they don't directly result in increased production. They just lift things that prevent citing and land citing vote negative versus ground, removing trade barriers left from the board relevant production debates and account for the operative comparable term and creates some critical external office. This answers also limits broader policy laws and separate basis makes it impossible to anticipate topic evolution that topics are already complex on enough levels. Will adding a new form policy sector makes it unmanageable on the next off text the 50 states and reference territories should remove state citing restrictions on community solar power production. State level standardization distribution generates policy solves the whole case assessment 8. In the absence of local guidance, governments are more likely caught in the middle of an expensive development of ordinances, streamlining installation model provisions for zoning have in employed states. The development of small systems has been encouraged in many parts of the state. California such promotes small ways and motivate companies to enact ordinances, creating a roadmap for development. Clear rules provide transparency. Communities should revisit their law states for progressive legislative limits on municipal power resisting solar. California limits on reasonable variance of solar energy. States have legislated that any restriction that restricts solar energy is void and enforceable. New Mexico's amendment has the same effect. Florida borders dissimilar binding agreements and counterpoint solve state clean energy funds are a critical driver of distributed generation policies. Madison April 2012. To clean energy funds are developed to ensure support for renewable energy. Common user service for rebate programs for renewable energy systems fund renewable energy project loan programs and financial support received through the state fund may increase the effectiveness of our policies by bringing down capital costs. State clean energy funds invested 1.5 billion in renewable energy projects. State funds have supported a broad range of renewable technologies, including significant investment in grid connected PV states. Use clean energy funds to discourage
To encourage DG projects, financial support from state clean energy funds was allocated to distribute generation projects. Clean energy funds should be investigated as a potential source of project capital. The clean energy funds may be designed to fund initiatives longer-term benefits. Clean energy fund investments can stimulate the development of companion industries and infrastructure for consumers' awareness of clean energy. And next off. New amendment from the revision passed for using every ounce of capital to hold votes in the line. Martin 331 bipartisan bill could feel release next week. Follow the House bill aiming at compromise the top business and labor groups reaching agreement on aggressive worker putting the deal to its path for immigration laws using every ounce of to try to get comprehensive reform. If there's one issue that the party could produce something meaningful, it would be immigration. More and more Republicans moving towards immigration get cut to fill political need. But there's a tectonic shift in GOP and Democrats extend their majority. They predict the Senate must have the votes necessary to pass the bill, but it won't be easy. Congress isn't interested in solar subsidies. Plan will be a fight hard. Well, to also look companies to have on Congress, they cannot be truly competitive to keep creating jobs for a few more years. Government support the effort to use from Obama lobbying the industries at the time when there was little enthusiasm for alternative energy subsidies. About the deficit are making lawmakers more skeptical about any new tax breaks for our businesses. Generally, taxpayer lose more than half $1 billion must live here to harness the renewable power in particular and comprehensive reform will boost every sector of the economy fast. To 12 comprehensive reform would increase U.S. GDP by at least 0.04% per year. The 10-year total is at least $1.5 trillion. Reform brings substantial gains in the short run and the rates for native born workers would decrease under the scenario because wage floor rises for all workers in industries where large numbers of illegally exploited immigrants currently work there. Benefits scenarios create broadly through the economy with every sector expanding and prevents nuclear war. Harrison Burroughs 9. The potential for great conflict proponent of volatile economic environment terrorist groups will become self-radicalized. Economic induced drawdown because of their friends lead states to pursue some ambitious conflict to the escalation of broader conflict. Close proximity of potential nuclear rivals will produce inherent difficulties. Uncertainty may place focus on preemption, leading to escalating crises. Conflict covered researchers could regenerate protectionism. Gross perceptions could result in interstate conflicts and clear team access to resources essential. The cooperation is difficult in a dog-eat-dog war on case.
There is an order starting on the environmental justice blog. Everyone there? Sorry, that was really stupid. That worked.
The environmental justice movement denies 86 certain minority groups Yamamoto and Lyman. The environmental justice framework to treat radical racial minorities interchangeable to assume all for all communities cover the health and distribution of moral burdens or main concerns with some racialized communities. However, the environmental justice is not about immediate health concerns or burden of distribution. Other scholarly writing, environmental justice is not addressed with adequate complexity or depth interplay between the natural and racial or radical, rather many make unexpert assumptions about racialized environments failing to determine the distinct cultural differences may include in the core relationship to the environment. Some might describe the study of voice disposal plan here and indigenous American community as environmental racist in that community might say the wrong is a denial of groups opportunity community might say this idea is sour because the France needed jobs in the area is an aspect of economic morale and the race-based politics of environmental justice movement reconstitutes racism and includes unity. Schleininger, the race-based politics is toxic to the movement. No matter if you outmoded, if you look where environmental justice movement has gotten into trouble, it's where you find a lot of infighting between different races. It hasn't actually served to be a unified movement. The fact that racism is a problem does not mean you should have race-based politics. Applying complexity theory leads to political paralysis and numerous other failures. Hendrick, 9 early days of application of complexity theory and much criticism about applicability or expectations, meaninglessness of trends, be distorted, making use arbitrary or misleading particular aspects of complexity. Only limited susceptibility theories have been worked out. Insufficient detail encourages woolly thinking and imprecision may lead to paralysis, fear, and things like attempting not to let this complexity may be used as an excuse for poor planning and implementation and environmental justice prevents communities from solving poverty and public health. Last 5. Environmental justice advocates propose compensated setting. Proposes the increasing government compensation package can decrease countervailing risk associated with poverty compensation pay for health care. Cost of better nutrition for communities made by the compensation of Lulu. Offers environmental justice advocates find such an outcome inherently unjust and violence is low now and decreasing tanker. 11. The world we pass is much worse. Violence has been declined. It's not violence is 0, but it is persistent by the global for millennia 2 years of violence. It was subsidies when empire imposes control over leading to the various pacts this country saw. People decline as zero sum plunder gave way to trade. What we take for granted great powers were almost always at war. The 20th century is violent for the second half. Non-nuclear states have been stopped as well. Political scientists point instead to democracy, trade, and international organizations which statistical evidence shows reduce the likelihood of conflict, deaths from political violence, and not present view. Hundreds of incentives point international forces really do keep the peace. Violence decline because circumstances have favored our better interests. The most obvious pacifying forces in the state with a monopoly on forcing other pacifying forces in commerce. Thus, technological process allows the exchange of goods to become more valuable through a relationship with America and China for far from war. We are unlikely to declare war. Technology's power, rationality, opportunity, human affairs, balance is reframed as probably to be solved rather than as a contest to be won. And nuclear war threat is real and outweighs structural violence, structural and invisible violence. There, expansion of structural violence to an all-pervasive, omnipresent force makes preventing war impossible. Ruling 78, the government is interested in poverty. They unfortunately did this by downgrading international labor because negative these tend to sterile the concept of structural violence, unfortunately the concept of fraud too, and include everything other factors with the feeling that most dangerous solutions of every conflict have few away from problems of state, puppet stable politics towards a grand, vague study of world developments the international system has, arms races, wars, and revolutions. The arms race could easily take us over cliff. Peace. Research has not been able to prevent the arms race. The arms race may well be another catastrophe. It still remains true that war, breakdown of style, national peace remains the greatest danger to human race, danger, human survival, fire, greater than poverty, repression, mark, and oppression, and multiple barriers to descent. And on the solvency club, multiple barriers to decentralize. Sorry, we it. Multiple barriers to decentralize renewables. 2 to 10. Regulation is complicated, so citing rooftop solar in 2 respects is sufficient support regulatory support for interconnection to a grid. A superior set of legal barriers to physical installation. The rooftop solar panels do not have the connected to the grid until both systems are installed. Absent uniform procedures plugging in can be so time consuming, difficult, and expensive that a user citing small systems regulatory variation remains time cost barriers to citing solar include private property restrictions, building codes, access to sunlight is essential. Citing depends on the right maintained access to sunlight, and solar is too expensive even if we give away the panels. Zanker 12 on cheap scientists. There's little argument to the solar systems are expensive even extreme. Drop the prices, we do little, make solar cells more competitive, cheap, volume, I can install, and won't reduce the overall cost yet of other materials as well as the cost for fabrication, installation, the rest of both the overall price taking to zero. Cost is not competitive, market competitive, and non-state regulations make plan impossible. Walsh 11. There's a lot more holding back renewable power in the U.S. Congress. Regulations from the government to state, city, and community level. Rules on installing solar differential struggles with permits as cost. The cost of solar market are staggering. The solar currently makes up 1% of U.S. power. A good intention on the national level don't translate to the community. And DG produces energy that is intermittent, which means they just boost fossil fuels, turns the atmosphere. And even if we follow distributed generation, then most of the regenerated large installations and will compromises include building renewable generation facilities for criticism of the transmission system floor with more or less utilities respond to our demand for electric power. They have used infrastructure for sending us power with a high level of efficiency, increases service on smaller carriers, which we're thinking very we make the economy, enemy, and he is us, and that crushes the environment, and yeah, nuclear does 5. The distributed generation has a dirty history. Distributed generation was phased out to clean up the air in our city. Distributed generation was open lots of jobs, diesel, or natural gas generators. Market generators.
Take a second to clarify. When you go for the strategies. 6. Let's talk about topicality real quick.
Okay.
Your interpretation evidence, the Veeraswamy in 1966 from the article T.M. Kannapa Mudaliar and Ors versus State of Madras majority opinion defines restriction. Why is that a good, predictable context to define U.S. energy policy?
Well, first of all, it's a court decision, so we think that it's representative. We think that it's still representative of energy policy in general.
What do you think this evidence talks about energy?
It talks about how restrictions obstruct freedom, whereas regulations promote it.
Okay.
It talks about.
So I want to talk about the substance of the interpretation. You say it's a direct and immediate limitation. What is the bright line between a direct and indirect limitation?
Our evidence talks about the distinction between confining something versus something that immediately affects it. So the idea is that like you just confine a company from, for example, using land, whereas a restriction would be something that says like you cannot produce here, as opposed to you cannot
produce here, as in.
Well, that you cannot produce. It would, like the restriction itself would have to refer to production, as opposed to just like.
Okay, so
as opposed to just a
let's talk about your production interpretation. Then it says that it excludes extraction and includes the generation of power from raw materials. I guess in the context of this and your restrictions definition, what would be a topical restrictions solar F?
An AF that said you should lift restrictions on a certain type of
like OCS.
A certain type of solar power.
And how is OCS?
Because it prevents people from like drilling oil. It's an actual restriction.
So it's a question
on
of the siting
of oil. Yours is a restriction on the land.
Politics, yeah. Actually, I want to talk about your Pinker evidence, which says violence decreasing, and it says the reason why that's happening is democracy, international peacekeeping, international organizations, and the state says violence is an all-time low. Why would your sort of economy impact then escalate? All those
the
things
Pinker, that actually, they go together pretty well. The Pinker evidence says that like economic interdependence, the global economic order are like helping preserve peace.
Well, why would interdependence lead to war?
Our impact evidence indicates that there would be a collapse of this economic interdependence.
Other question, your internal link to the economy and the immigration DA, it does, I'll give you say that immigration would boost sectors of the economy all across the board. Your impact evidence, though, assumes a collapse of the economy. What uniqueness evidence have you had that says the economy is destined for collapse right now?
Our internal link evidence talks about how the current economy is not looking good, that it's going to like revitalize the economy.
Okay, but how does that meet the threshold of collapse?
I mean, it says that there's an we're on a downward
the underlying part of your Martin evidence, the uniqueness, says that the reason why Republicans want immigration is to win over the Latino vote for re-election. Why would they throw that away for an energy policy?
Our link evidence is pretty good on this question, so it says.
I mean, yes, they have a motive.
The Martin evidence, first of all,
political capital effective, but he still has to expend
Thanks.
capital. It's really not sold. Still a debate.
Oh, shit.
Audio's off. Yeah.
Well, that's too late. The Kincaid kid just texted me and was just like, you think you're watching this being live streamed with 140 people watching?
160.
What is the website for the stream?
It's right behind you, justin.tv/GT debate stream.
I thought we were just emailing.
Oh,
Are you
sorry.
about to go all winners on the stream?
Yeah.
And just show the stream to stream?
That's a good idea.
What, share the stream to the stream? Like this?
Psychedelic with that.
I could do that right now.
I'm just
actually.
thinking.
Yeah, you should.
Here we go.
It's not. We should probably switch off.
That's meta right there.
It's a debate inside of a debate inside of a debate inside of a debate.
Did you send it?
Yeah. My computer just takes like a second to send.
Did you maybe click reply instead of reply all?
I definitely hit reply all. It should be there in a second.
Okay.
Her email has
I have a setup like delay so that if I mess something up I can hit undo.
Oh, that's smart.
That's really
I
smart.
should do that.
That's really
Use that.
That's really sweet.
I wonder what that's used for.
Actually, yeah, it's the listserv mistakes.
Is this part of your argument? There's like a 4 or 5 second delay, so if you have audio on, it's gonna get weird.
Okay. The order will be the 1 and C case order. So like, I guess it was energy justice and solvency. T got a defend plan. T restrictions. Counter plan. Politics.
Advantage solvency, government restrictions, campaign.
Yes.
I wasn't. Yeah.
justice argument. That is the status in which white males dominate the energy estimate. The reason why that is because it's not rooted in community everyday experiences. This is solvency for the room to shift the way that energy citing or energy justice decision making is made in the first place. They say that it's race based. This is not the app. It's based on a complex intersection of oppression and forming ties within it between communities. Not a single racial oppression comes first, which is what this evidence seems. They say complexity to political paralysis. This is a straw person. This evidence concludes that complexity theory is critical to new modes of policy making that are accurate and denies the linear predictive practices of the. They say they make it another argument on environmental justice. This is about a compensation package for citing, which is absolutely not the app. They say the pink evidence. The question is, do you create violence? Is decreasing for who? This evidence defines violence as war, which takes out the disad impact and not the app, because war is very unlikely to occur when that takes out their economy impact. Now they say the building evidence is terrible and is indicting the idea that poverty is quote caused by thugs and refers specifically their impact is not structural violence in the abstract, but rather structures of inequity and energy citing that target marginalized communities for waste and pollution. There's no reason why war would shift or increase the way that corporations make energy citing decisions to target vulnerable communities. Additionally, the app believes there's no such thing as rationality. Social location determines risk assessment and impact decision making. Be suspicious of their impacts. Their authors ignore the effects of environmental hazard on localized communities while heightening catastrophe. Cost-benefit analysis begin from the perspective of the oppressed. That is the Richard Nick Stevens. Now the solvency debate. The evidence says that the only barrier is that you have to connect to the grid, which is not the app, because these are microgrids which are separate from the grid. They say that it's too expensive for specificity. The Beals evidence says that things like cost sharing salt, because you don't have to purchase it from utilities, which means that they decline overall. So solar power is inevitable, and prices are rapidly decreasing for a multitude of reasons. That is the Jackson evidence. Additionally, all the app solves prices below the top. There are opportunities to make solar available. That very important solar cooperative incredible 8 billion cubic solar is electric for African Americans to keep the most of the way to bring costs down without compromising other services. The institution provides now. They say the Walsh evidence assumes state regulations are the issue, which is clearly what the app reveals. They also a person wise and a perspective more specific says that state regulations are the prime barrier to community solar stuff. It's about distributed generation in the abstract. Now they say the intermittency collapses the environment. Status quo energy is much worse. Alistair and 11 renewable energy compatible pollution effects are possible with marriage works to PV cost pollution certain materials here targeting considering the whole life cycle of PVs. In fact, are much lower than that of fossil fuels. Also, solar power is inevitable. That argument was about. There's also no impact to environmental climate. That's not the app's question of citing practice, not the overall environment. Some also uses gendered language. That is a reason to reject them. Climate and some military to reinforce a system which maintains the African factors, but don't maintain the incredibly important tools without 2 words. Maintain the status quo. This is an independent reason they should lose. Given in 99, Texas language will influence who sectors without challenging language awareness. When it takes the general language and non-true political tribal to limit their capacity to think language starts reality sex meaningly to marginalization women's experience now topicality. We agree we'll defend the plan, but plan implementation affected by the framing of the 1AC that will be in the counterplan. Now to restrictions. We mean first is we mean Welsh lack of the national and neutral regulation of solar stuff. The US needs more initiative from restriction in 19 states. Also, we mean the plan sets restrictions defining they are just defining the way the plan operates. This is a solvency question, not topicality. Also, we mean solar microgrids are prohibited by the state by the states. That is the Brown evidence. Also, we are restriction on installation until 70 production energy production defined the transformation of natural research commonly formed about it by the definition trying to the sun are not examples of energy production with the installation of solar whether the installation of solar panels are additionally counter interpretation restrictions are legal limitation on the use of real property or land excludes conditions. Court of Appeals 12 the definition of restriction did not include there's no inclusion back country to define restriction and limitation protecting the use of property may provide and per interpretation versus limit they limit out offshore wind outs and natural gas outs and more outs which are the core of the topic because they're based on citing our interpretation limits out things like environmental restrictions also ground citing city federalism natural gas politics the is a transition away from centralization ensures that you'll backlash reasonability the interpretation cause race about the arbitrarily there's also no absolute because there's no direct government prohibitions on energy production. Also, there assumes India, which is a different legal context, which is not useful for topic education. Takes out any restriction arguments. Also, their evidence says the key test for the difference between regulations and restrictions is whether it imposes a direct burden, which is not a prohibition. In the underlying part also says the dividing line between the two is not capable of producing satisfactory definition. You should prefer interpretation. Now the counterclaim. 50 be outdividing issue to artificially contains research and application causes an imbecile form of political education that's only relevant within the debate. Also, conditionalities but each stories to be seen often because they can read multiple contradictory positions. One, disposition advocacy solves. They also have no evidence in the context of restrictions or decentralized solar that are not attached to the grid. Their evidence says that states incentivize clean tech energy now, which is interesting but not relevant. The counterplan maintains state authority resource energy based on solving the only evidence that explicitly compared between state and federal remove solar siting restrictions. 10% West and first that states will reinstate restrictions empirically. States institute uniform environmental regulation that are dispowerful control only federal repeal friends who state action even if they don't take control over solar
society makes the implementation regime on stable localities who are less likely to experiment with decentralized solar power because they fear future state preemption. Centralized energy is much more influential at the state level. Large-scale utilities lobby state governments for preferential legislation and permutation to both. Now the politics to that. Complexity takes out the linear predictions that A causes B causes impact. He ignores the complex interaction that occur along each step in the chain. That is the accurate evidence as well as around one good evidence as well, and extend the castle evidence high magnitude low probably impacts short risk analysis because any risk becomes relevant. Also, this is not true. You can do the plan of past immigration form. Also, political capital links to our complexity arguments, especially on immigration. Hirsch to second months ago when talked about Obama having seat over immigration. Got control of this demonstrated difference or problems with immigration. Little do you with Obama's that almost terribly do with this PC is so partly found in that we know more than we actually do with political power and discounts. We opportunity about changing political figure capital leader campaign is or her against the capital is NMP is something to do with literature successfully quantifies it. Also, sequestration should have triggered the impact. Kim 13 sequestration was 15 million immigration reports already massive back in the year. Which means those we no longer budget because we drag the legal immigration to the country after days over to the right documents the line to enter the country. Longer reductions would reduce staffing. Also, their land argument does not apply. It's about solar subsidies, which is not the Af Republicans would love decreasing government control. Also, the path of immigrant citizenship is route immigrants go to the back of the line. Wait forever. Kim 13 White House bill is legally dealing path to take 13 years path to document immigrant have to go to the back line. The ego national says the proposal could delay citizenship in another generation. Believes that the wait will be even longer than it looks on paper. Also, CIR is terror causes structural violence. The point is racism. It has in 12 Michigan immigration reform depends on the existence of the president of capital system. State fucking legislative question for the system assimilation, not ability to try to narrative assimilation, rules of question, religion, speed, arbitrary assimilation, such a freedom and opportunity becomes a standard of the existence of the oppressions that we live under. Additionally, there is no trade-off because there's no legislation. Washington Times during 28 the term is argument people on the 14 weeks before the union but potentially produce legislation and the massive proposal being called because the senators should go to be independently judged by the judiciary committee that will take months, not few weeks. Also, there actually. You should reject the scale of dissent legislative duty to use crisis politics to maintain their authority over politics while enabling continuation of systemic harm. Edelman in 85 running the debates legislative duty statements of non-humanity for people live spectacle that helps the political landscape to turn the crises that put it over how to do the social world market not just the continues and marketing duties to change the political spectrum not to translate satisfaction to class racial gender and other cultures regardless short-term news about political action political language to do research for the acquiescence public action and which they know person issuing. Also, they have no uniqueness for the economy. Their impacts assume a total collapse. There's also no spillover. The uniqueness says Republicans won't compromise because of the elections in Latino vote. There's no interaction between that and energy. Also, they can't predict their economy and impact the point. Love and free competition being talking about feels to manage the fact exchange. You acknowledge protection being power, but not be powerful enough so they come in. Or when we solve these subjects, third name character North Strong, keep changing the back one of the voice cannot be examining. Or they cannot be examining one partner solution. The whole story really not equal to some parts either fundamentally non-linear. Even the individual relationship between the parts are clear after one system means direct regularly complex operations to small level models. Only the test against past experience of testing out for complexes in the past is no indication of the past. Is no indication of the future. Also, you prefer structural trends and damage to their alphabet stats. Status quo. Political capital means nothing. Not him. Love and empirical argument. Feel leaders don't want to try to tend to be framed episodic and foolish to about journalism. Avoid any radical foundation with evidence of the data collaborative form. Not possible to try to understand the theoretical truths. Based reporting track academic and background. Of course, political coverage to put them in a larger context. Also, we have a ton of data. Klein 12 background prior records fill up a front narrative on the left. Some city here, which figure didn't have deal for his free and do not operate as discipline. Considering you to that background to Republican their party. Thank you for them. Treating me the president divisive. Adversaries the numbers to back up this restructuring Obama. It's latest law of president unable to transform political. We don't have a system set up for president to drive legislation through content added. The filibuster have a system which the president is the job of the president to persuade an opposition that has both an incentive and power to resist him. And also even pros PC authors see the internal link as an 8% chance. Backman, 11 presidents operating in the perspective for strong economy, higher political government, lower third of political capital, 30 increase of the chance of success by 8% of political capitalism back is not tried. We should certainly not put it not to overcome basic realities. Also, Republicans will never compromise. Not him in 12 practical powers of pass legislation widely appreciated but also when these will when the president takes position on issue action not from polarities opposition legislative implementation on rights of Obama's presidential will competitive way which will peer control the House of factors safety requirements. Not clear how Obama's trying to get rid of trying hard to force for unity caucus or African terrible majority being forced to discuss compromises.
What's this gendered language argument on the case?
Which piece of that?
There are two cards.
I don't know, just knew. What was it?
The hoaxer evidence says we have met the enemy and he is us.
Okay. That's the only one?
Yeah.
That is the link.
Alright.
And our evidence says that kind of language is important because when used.
Got it. Okay. How does the plan change state energy policy?
It removes restrictions. It removes state restrictions
I know.
on
Explain
community
the interaction
siting.
between the plan at the federal level and then the state government response.
I don't understand how to be more specific with that. The federal government would I guess,
I mean, your
remove
evidence,
state restrictions. It would ban them. There would be
no,
legislation.
your
that would
evidence is
cause
pretty
government-
specific on this. It's not that the federal government doesn't have authority to lift the state restrictions. They can just tell the states that you're not allowed to use them.
I don't understand the distinction between those two things. The federal government would initiate legislation which sort of bans states from having these restrictions.
Okay, so why doesn't the states lifting those restrictions themselves solve that?
Personally, my is explicitly comparative between the federal government taking its action and the states taking its action. It says it's not a question of solar power itself or any of your solvency. It's a question of who has the authority to make that decision in the first place. Because even if there's a history in which the states have sort of pushed progressive legislation for things like distributed generation, and then they rolled it back, which means there's not a legacy of trust between the states and communities. I'll get to that. Even if you can, we don't think you should get for durable fiat. That's an argument we'll make in the 1 hour. But two, even if you win that argument, there are evidences amazing on the perception that this has happened in the past means that no one will want to experiment because they're too afraid that the states will roll it back because they've done that every time in the past.
Okay.
Evidence uses the language of the possibility that the states could roll it back.
Which evidence do you read that indicates that investors will perceive the plan as strong enough or different enough from past and state attempts?
I don't know why investors are relevant to the solvency of the F.
I mean, you say that people won't get involved in it because they think the states will roll it back.
Right. People won't get involved with it because states always roll back progressive legislation.
Right. Which evidence do you read that indicates that people will perceive the perceive the plan differently?
Because the plan is the first thing Wiseman evidence is imperative. It says federal government does this, solves it. It advocates the plan text. I
understand it advocates the plan text. My question is where does it I don't understand the difference in perception.
I don't know how to make this more clear. Evidence says states equal chilling effect. Federal government solves it.
Why?
Because states cannot roll back federal legislation. If the federal government bans them from doing something, they can't change it. If they change the law, they can change it.
Okay, that's fine. When was the last time the states tried to do this?
They never tried to do the plan in the past. However, there are evidence that examples of progressive legislation.
You say the states roll back. I'm confused as to what they've rolled back when.
Well, our evidence just cites examples. You're right. I don't know the sort of exact names of the legislation, but our evidence says that the states have a very long legacy of initiating sort of distributed generation, clean tech, and then they roll it back, and people don't trust them.
Is the first piece of Perch evidence that you wrote on Altus with you?
No, I flipped everything that I read. exorbitant. My name will be on there. They're
You've
just
had
not
all
gonna
the
be
beers, you made it.
Yeah, were they talking about the local price?
No, they're talking about the local, but
How far are you, just you know?
About 13 more.
I bet you can do it this summer.
Yes, talk to the high school kids about it. The virtual high school kids.
Did you just get off the tub? Did you just get off the tub?
Yeah, last summer this week.
That
So
was
we're
good.
back.
I can set up the
He's
table,
like,
it's fine.
oh, you seem like you're putting on a little something here. I was like, fuck you, Tristan, what the fuck are you talking to me about? How dare you? I have to listen to your fucking broken English all the time. Hey, man.
Hey Nick,
Don't talk about my camp.
who just says you suck at basketball?
We'll deal with that later.
Did you say you sent it?
Yeah. Did you get it?
No. Not yet.
Jake, did you get it?
I did not get it. No worries.
Okay, I'll send it. That's fine. Did you fix that one? Alright, I just resent it, so see you guys then.
That's my time to delay.
Yeah, I got it.
Got it?
Yeah, I need
So
to put it on.
Simon said,
Yeah, it's got those bullets, I swear.
no, just like the Kincaid kids, it was just it's updated.
Nice.
Cause one of them texted me that they were watching, so.
I like that. Negative shout out.
Yeah. Oh, I'm never chickens.
That's right.
Sites. You can take them down.
I got it.
I really like the speaker.
Best chapel speaker ever.
Come full circle, cause probably nobody even told you.
You guys have that?
Mm-hmm.
All good? Look, counterpoints on the entirety of that, which means even if they win their impact calculation number, even 1% risk of the net benefit is a reason that you can vote. Negatively, line by line, 50 safety out, good counter-interpretation takes, counterpoint justified if we have a solvency, if the firm mechanism makes, predictable and core ground guarantees literature for the after result, 50 states should implement, energy policies, no for 2006, they should remain laboratory experimentation because most energy investment decisions made, the state level state decisions made closer to the markets, all stationary policy tools to create, to create the necessary 50 state programs emerge, programs additionally, the app is uniquely about state restrictions, makes it uniquely important for the state to be able to test why the government should do the plan. Negative flexibility is also good. We have to test the plan for all possible items. Also good. Education devolution is key. Should energy policy how we decide to approach distribution of resources and important implications that it's fair, not tumble. They can read signal advantages, to the action versus the bottom or impact turn politics, and it's not a vote or reject the argument, not the team error negative. It's also predictable, especially when they read an argument about state restriction. No conditionality is a good thing, especially when we only read one conditional counterpoint, which will also be our interpretation. Also know one non-contradictory conditional counterpoint. Obviously, we didn't make contradiction in this transition, but on potential issues and possibility, negative possibility, education standards. Additionally, advocacy skills will take away that we fail to test the outcome of every include presumption does not shift, which means conditionality. Presumption does not shift, which means the condition, which means that conditionality is not a voter now. Their solvency notices arguments to apply states. So all these centralized renewables, they're taking the lead in the status quo theory. And Channel 3 would say governments and revolutions and launch to implement decentralized rule of rather than nation fundamentally shift the regulatory balance as well. And the energy crisis in America 32 states have implemented net metering. Net metering is the cornerstone of state energy policies encouraging renewable energy in the counter plan. Solves the case Huber 2012 net metering laws must enable a scenario that makes solar hard and profitable. Retailers and color support for special status sale of net meters and buffers to the full benefit the model form credit for the illustrations as being able to the net metering benefit is 75% of California business more to business, which means they're pushing renewable energy in the status quo. No reason their uncertainty arguments make any sort of sense. Additionally, we should get durable fiat if they make a theoretical objection. Why we shouldn't, then we will answer. But there's no reason the counterpoint will get rolled back or messed up any more than the app. The app get rolls back. in fact, because it's unconstitutional. Miller, 79 federal judges in the area, subject legal obstacles to by the Supreme Court and appellate courts for federalized constitutional purpose, limiting federal power to change state policies, and have federal power to intervene. State removing proceedings have been challenged in court about what is the constitutional and state jurisdiction. Is the permutation about that? Obviously, links to politics, including any federal action permutation taken to jail. State supports low delete opinions and want to take it back until after the vote. I'm also not really sure what a permutation do both looks like in this case. The states have to remove their restrictions. What does it mean for the federal government to also remove those restrictions? Obviously, does not make sense how federal policy crowd out the states, reduces demand for state action ad or doesn't have a negative effect on federal relations. State restrictions crowding regulation may serve as a substitute for state regulation, thereby reducing the benefits of adopting or maintaining state level protections, market protections. Now, the politics system. Look, most of the complexity theory will be handled in the case, but we can say one thing: calculations are good predictive models and necessary to allow for individual political predictive foresight that is necessary to prevent future catastrophe. Of course, I want you to look more dystopian. Measure can enable such a political action that future predictive foresight, putting into practice social responsibility for the trend of every global catastrophe. Predictive foresight consists of participating in debating struggle against possible catastrophe means that even if our predictions are not good, they're at least valuable to political debate, which is the reason you should include them. The rest that debate will be on the full basic political capital, but not for immigration. We will get to that when they read a billion political capital on key cards. They look at the top of the debate, they can see that short-term economic collapse will turn the case and leaves no way to short-term economic collapse will turn the case and leave no way to limit decentralized soldiers. Marginalized communities obviously get hardest when the economy climbs. No way they could implement these low powers. Also, growth solves poverty and doesn't cause adding to the growth represents an important means for reducing poverty. There is strong statistical growth as low income and income inequality since income distribution levels to over time economic growth. Raise income for all members of society, including the poor. Growth solves poverty because globalization and free trade goes well. It helps some very sustained growth that can relevant contribute reduction to poverty. The greatest reduction have coordination that will move towards success and openness, globalization, facilitates spread modern medicine. Because we don't really even have to win. We don't even have to win the unique debate to access that economy growth is good for structural violence, which accesses the type of impact calculation the app is talking about. But we will probably win the lens of the state inquisition to trigger the link there and their card. It's awful. The evidence is not the context of immigration. It's about legal course of immigration making more backlogs for immigration does not assume immigration reform. They subscribe to the Republicans on the plane. There's no evidence for this. You can only assume it would be linked to things like surrender. Now the plan caused massive political capital co-ed. There is no great national renewable energy pressures, renewable energy government, Republicans already in charge. Why? But anyone, why would it put 30 fear consumption? Eventually, we need a president willing to spend political capital, political power of energy companies, intense central part of the environmental policy, just making away by Obama decided to invest political capital elsewhere, and that kills Obama's immigration push. Separate. This is a focus link separate from the political capital debate. Hardware. To February 6th, I'm doing energy. Everyone else in capital is focused on something else. Congress and the president are galvanizing around immigration. The White House prioritized healthcare reform, climate before Obama's accomplishment. The leaders can federal to everything from pendulum to swing on energy policy seems unfathomable. You're never going to have anything like the push on immigration. Obama can capitalize on immigration on energy. Obama face a unified Republican Party. The president is correct on the call and pushes it into this money next. Logical place is immigration, the link energy and claim. Big one on education. They see zero terror, structural violence, but so does the economy access and so the economy probably makes us also CRA. CRA is better than the status quo. There is no pathway for citizenship now when you shift and sit down, which means even if we help a couple of immigrants get it, it's still better than the status quo for them to have the card that says that the immigrants will get funded into a military machine is from a total hack. Has no good words for why the immigrants, once they're citizens, would actually get put into the military. That literally makes no sense. It's definitely not the substance of the bill. They say crisis politics again. Oh, they say crisis politics, they won't handle it in the case to it, but then this does not decrease the merit, but does not answer to the merit. Political predictions adding value to political debates is the only way that we stop political paralysis. They say you need this for the economy. We don't need to access these structural violence. We don't need to access these structural violence. In fact, we can also still access the nuclear war. We'll another internally here undocumented illegal immigrants serving down worker wages. They work for next to nothing and will never report employers flying in 2010 unskilled workers face even tougher competition from undocumented too because they're continuously step pay beneath the minimum wage and wage increases are the backbone of deflation. Her and cause of 2010 changes nominal wage is the backbone of deflation across the nominal wage increases are identical to productivity growth and no changes. Wage growth means the wage growth ignore deflation that collapses the economy. Moving 28 deflation dangerously soon liquidity truck deflation. Truck deflation nominal policy risking up below zero and thus college growth is effect deflation fall price means the real cost capital high limit for the cost of to maintain and leads to trade vicious cycles and comes jobs are called linked further falls which base price in the real value numbers of making debtors far more severe linked to risk corporate and household which still says credit losses means that we don't have to win uniqueness because not passing immigration reform independently collapses the economy through wage inflation. They simply can't predict the economy. This just says that there's some level of uncertainty. Of course, there's some level of uncertainty to all impact calculus, but the bright line is not drawn here between why. If you can't predict the economy, you can't predict the way investors function. Why do you get to predict the way that prices will behave in the future in the app? And why do you get to predict the way that investors will inevitably direct on prices, solar power, and what the renewable market will look like? There's no Breland and the complexity arguments which even and when the thesis of the complexity arguments of the predictions are bad, there's not really a distinction between what the negative is doing protecting the economy and what the app is doing. What the app is doing. We're also predicting economic trend based on empirical data on how deflation works now. The political capital debate. Look, our theory is true. Paris proof deal making matters. Klein evidence theory is overly pessimistic. This is Mandel. March 23rd, I want to offer Klein more optimism. Here is back from Berkeley and quiet. Negotiations, conference, inspired vision of the presidency. I disagree with the details. Digital don't matter, not just the party lines, but just the president. The president possesses political capital. Congress doesn't. History tells us effective ways to use that capital. And political capital is finite and it dries. Decision-making share in 2009. The president's power situationally derived and highly variable and formal. Power is a function of political capital. Presidents can force political change if they're to enact their agenda. The president faces entrenched coalitions. This is an invitation for institutions to engage in major ongoing battles against post-presidents. Now, presidents perceive their capital as finite, which means our theory is true in practice, even if they're evidence, even if they're evidence that's the actuality of it. Marshall and President presidents anticipate the use of force may take the larger congressional environment. They anticipate the likelihood that conflict may damage political fortunes. Actual presidents choose to use force and press legislative initiatives. Political capital is finite. Presidents place the minimum freedom in passing legislative initiatives. The presidency to build a relationship with Congress. You should also they say they have a lot of data on this. This is just data on presidential politics. It's not always been the case. Not the reason it's not perceived as the case, which means they even have its role. Even if it has a role played out the way we saw like now. And now they say Republicans are willing to compromise. I'm not don't really see. There's no warrant to this claim as to why they would go into trial, especially when they've conceded issue-specific uniqueness, which you should prefer. The bill is passing now. Republicans are willing to compromise now. The fact that yes, they want Latino voters, which is why they're even coming to the table, but there's still been extensive debates in Congress over immigration reform. Immigration is a legacy issue. Obama will continue to push despite reports of the country Mali 31. Obama saw immigration as a legacy and was fully committed to pushing lawmakers past bill. Dismiss GOP suggestions. Obama was so serious about immigration. There's Daddy wants fast comprehensive immigration from the president. Interest lawmakers drafting negotiating process deal were bolstered. Speaking groups agreed upon proposal cast relevant guests. Work for it.
What was the name of the last card?
The last card was an answer to the argument that you
What was the author name?
the Mali evidence.
Okay, you're in some evidence the plan gets rolled back because it's unconstitutional. The argument that this evidence makes is not in the context of energy. It just says that, that the Supreme Court has sometimes decided that the federal government has limited power in intervening into state rulemaking. Why does that apply to
the title of the article, Legal Obstacles to Decentralized Solar Energy Technology.
That's fair enough, but that in the underlying part of the article, it's talking about things like the National Energy Act, which restricted
regulation, which might have raised some older constitutional issues. Seems like a great
that's fine. The evidence that you read for why you turn the case is just a bunch of growth solves poverty cards. I guess there are two questions I have. First is even if people are less poor, why does that prevent corporations from citing toxic waste plants in communities of color?
Okay, first of all, I would say that was one of my process questions of the 1AC, and you were like, do we not solve all environmental justice? Obviously, the plan does not solve all environmental justice, neither does the status quo. Additionally, I just want to point out that that's separate from the turns case arguments. That's an advantage, or I guess not an advantage, but impact to the critique. The turns case arguments are that short-term economic collapse would mean that none of the lower
for that argument that short-term economic collapse means there's no way to implement decentralized solar power.
Yeah,
especially because the federal government doesn't have to spend any money on the app.
Right. Economic collapse doesn't just affect the federal government. It probably means that investors who are looking for new things to invest in probably don't look at.
I guess a secondary question, even if growth solves poverty, it means that everyone across the board gets a little less poor. Why does that resolve issues of income inequality? There'll still be people who are relatively poorer than people who are corporations who are making these siting decisions. Right? And so they'd still probably target people who are relatively the most poor and most disadvantaged and have the least influence in political decisions.
That's fine. Our card indicates that income distributions, despite policy that has been directly targeted at reducing income inequality, remain relatively equal over time. And so the best thing we can do is try to raise the bar for everyone.
It says that income distributions are stable, not that growth solves them.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Income distributions are difficult to address, so the best thing we can do is make it better for everyone and reduce it.
Okay. You read a focus link. Obama's also focusing on things like gun control and messing up his sequestration mistake. Why doesn't that
I guess that's a cool analytic, but our evidence indicates that Obama right now is putting his major energy into galvanizing people around the immigration. It literally says
you just read a generic PC is finite card. Obama obviously also invested a lot of PC in trying to get the sequestration deal as well as the gun control deal. Why doesn't that mean that Obama doesn't have any political capital for immigration?
First of all,
why didn't that trade off?
The gun control deal is separate. He's focusing on immigration right now. Second of all, like sequestration already passed issue-specific uniqueness proves
Right,
that that obviously didn't push
you've
it
just
past
read
the
a
break,
piece
so
of
it
very
still
generic
has
piece of
PC find it left.
evidence
Doesn't
that
speak to
PC
the
people
amount of
find
political capital it has.
any
Maybe it
legislation
drained
trades
some.
off.
Issue-specific uniqueness proves it didn't drain enough to affect its immigration negotiations.
Just need to flash this.
Email?
Or email, sorry. Order's going to be case, starting with their gendered language argument, then environmental justice, and then back to solvency.
General language are the justice, contention, solvency?
Yeah. I have gendered language and solvency, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Alright.
I'm not, sorry.
Alright, just let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, okay.
Look, this is a new motor. It's a one word and one piece of our evidence day. You shouldn't force us to change our evidence. Gender paraphrasing is illegitimate. We shouldn't be forced to do it. There's strategic implications. Mean teams can replace things that they said. They find unpalatable words that work with strategic benefit. For example, to dodge and homicide critique, you can insert homicide into all your nuclear war impact cards, which massively inflate the quality of your evidence. And it's not legitimate practice. You can't rewrite evidence at will. At the point, we might as well just write our own cards and forget this whole research thing. And you have to defend the practice of removing gender language and attention to your argument should be interpreted as a call for wholesale revision of all text. Written backgrounds also. Censorship is bad. Excising offensive language public discourse is the definition of censorship. Censorship is an ineffective tool of cultural resistance. Butler 97 misappropriating resistance is a solution of state-sponsored censorship on the one hand, returning the possible notion of cyber freedom on the other. The content speaking takes place in the order of the unstable promises to expose violating boundaries of legitimacy speech. The agencies derive from the limitations of language, opening up the foreclosures, saying the air of people become part of the very fence that must be committed in order to expand. The domination of linguistics forever, the re-signification of speech requires opening new context, speaking in ways that have never yet been legitimated, and hence producing legitimation in new and future forms. Also, not a voter. We're not going to go for a gendered language. I won't be extending the gendered language on the environmental justice flow. Starting with the complexity argument. You should defer to the best evidence to resolve impacts there. It's the only way to avoid dogmatism, create effective policy paralysis. You can and should act in the face of uncertainty. Still 2000. Instead of clean, uniform set of empirical validation, it is possible to represent a series of observational statements for the purpose of rendering explicit explanation more plausible. This is what positivists have been doing anyway. Logically consistent hypotheses supported by data. Social analysis is not about final truth set for meaningless. It can be an ongoing collective endeavor to refine inferences to render it sensible. This is not required to accept everything without validation, and complexity theory is useless for policy making. Clarity 10. The complexity theory seems to present a deterministic argument. We lose sight of the role of policymakers play. They make a density truth system as a rule-bound structure with minimal room for the role of agency. Wider scientific calculate the benefit of complexity theory to the ability to step back and see the system as a whole. This doesn't guide us too much because we can still do systems at different levels through. Although anti-reductionism and whole system approaches sound, attractive reductionist theories have a strong hold in political science. Fall. We may view the world as a complex system. We do not have the ability to study this one in the wall. The complex system perspective may prefer to study these systems as a whole. AICF may be no worse in a way to study process when you're faced with limited resources, cognitive abilities. Complexity theory complicates the study of policy without offering something new. This point seems strong to provide the study of interpretation. Also, all their evidence is the complexity theory evidence is the context of international relations. About we can't predict actions in a complex scenario when other actors doesn't apply to doesn't apply to our internal link arguments. Also, their Hedrick evidence is just does not advance the claims that they say it does. All of their evidence says that complexity makes it difficult to make predictions. Does not advance the claim that it's impossible. We're going to be agreeing that we can make reasoned predictions. We can make reasoned predictions and act in the face of uncertainty even if it's not 100% certain. They say that violence is only decreasing for people who are privileged, who takes out and our pinker evidence takes out the dissent, but that doesn't take out the because the pinker evidence assumes strong economy, dissent collapses, the economy means still impact still. There are also, our pinker evidence says that it's true, that conditions are improving for everyone. It lifts people out of poverty, says that things like global standards of living are increasing across the board. They say we don't make, they say half outweighs, but our global war evidence in the 1NC is actually pretty good here. It says that nuclear war outweighs because it affects everyone, means the question of who benefits goes negative, but also is explicitly compared to things like poverty, because those types of impacts cannot be solved in one sweeping policy. Although poverty is a big impact, it's not like the plan solves all of poverty, whereas the dissent does cause an all-out nuclear war, means it's still it is better to act on that impact on the solvency flow. They say microgrid solves. They say microgrid solves are a plug-in argument, but our 1NC or 2 evidence says that you can't plug into the grid if you have there's difficulty plugging solar energy into the grid. There's no evidence in the app that says that microgrids exist completely independent of the larger electrical grid. Other evidence we're going to be going for later. Other evidence we're going for later explains that instability in solar power means that the grids that rely on external sources. They can't be entirely self-contained. Means that these hurdles make the plan maybe the plan can't solve. They also say cost sharing solves the price argument. I'm not sure how this is true, given that our Zener evidence that it doesn't work. Even if a solar power was free, it's simply not a cost effective. Given that there are other cheaper sources of energy. Other cheaper sources of energy also answers their price decline arguments. Price decline arguments. Also, they say that state regulations solve everything, but our 1NC Walsh evidence says that there are many other factors like a city, state, local, and community ordinances that prevent people from getting these siting permits and actually developing a solar power the way that the plan wants to do. Means the plan does not cause the spillover. Does not cause the advantage that they talk about. Then they say the status quo is net worse, but is net worse on pollution. But our evidence is the only comparative evidence here. Their evidence just says that the status quo is bad, but our Hexter evidence says that you would use more fossil fuels in a world in which you use large solar grids because intermittent availability of sun and fuel for the solar power means that you have to rely on fossil fuels coming out of the grid. Turns their advantage because they don't access environmental justice if they're not improving environmental conditions. Means that we access their internal lane, probably at the very least means the app I can't solve.
8:10.
complexity. I think that's the advantage.
Do you want me to start tabletop? That's fine. It's already set up.
Yeah, sorry, so the complexity case page, solvency case page, and then the counter plan, and then the dised.
One of those legs is perilously close to the edge.
That is a good point.
There you go.
Welcome to danger. So sexy.
Oh, sorry for denying you your eroticism.
I haven't even slept tonight.
Yep.
Who has, Nick? Who has?
There's no way to see everything.
Oh, what?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
Stop with that.
It's actually Nick that's Alright, everyone good? Complexity is another thing for the way the politics work. They have no method argument, means they cannot defer to specificity. They cannot read evidence to defend the piecemeal nature of the D. The political system is composed of multiple intersecting subsystems set up with parts of constant flux of linear monocausal chains, intervening actors, unknowns, managed by small gaps in the internal link. The aft is not linked to these arguments because we don't reject all predictions. The aft isn't about building a snare for injustice being oriented towards complex systems. Also, structural harms are observable in the status quo, not future speculative events. Purely identifies restrictions as constituting a major barrier. Now, 3 is decentering decision making is key to addressing complexity, which is our Gilchrist evidence. Now they say the still evidence says that we need social scientific data, which some other evidence means they say the carrying evidence. It just says we can't act, but the act just proves that the impact to whether or not it's good is not, it doesn't matter. The only question whether the predictions are actually true. Now specificity goes both ways. They need specific defensive understanding causality and complexity is an impact turned to the focus on specificity. The whole is more than sum of its parts. Now structural violence outweighs A points prerequisite discrimination for disasters. Visible violence bubbles up from ongoing pressure in unpredictable ways. Beta points epistemology emphasis on big stick impacts is constructed from a white male standpoint for the marginalized violence is slow and ever present. Virtue exceeds complexity, focusing on patterns over events is key to deal with uncertainty. Infusing local perspective is key to remedies skewed analysis. Nixon, Hendrickson, Virtue there. Evidence simply cannot hang with us. Does not assume energy justice. Also the Goldstein Evans just says that things like injustices are linked, which is our argument. Now the solvency page, the solvency page, you say microgrids are not independent of the link. Yes, it is. That's the definition of what a microgrid is, which is like Ronan Bell's evidence means you don't have to connect to the grid. They say the Zaner evidence. First we don't need to win we don't actually need to win the implementation because our President Wyman's evidence and says that the scale of politics is what matters in the state restrictions to deter local experimentation. The Zaner evidence assumes solely individuals by not caution. So Bale's evidence also does not assume future transiency. Solar is inevitable and decreasing. Mr. Jackson evidence there is an oversupply now because of pro-renewable Senate, because pro-renewable Senate is increasing reduction. Also, we're the only ones that have evidence from 2013, only from 2013. They say so. Walsh evidence this evidence they continue to research. This evidence is primarily state restrictions. Also, President Wyman is is much better on the question of community, not just distributed generation, which is by the way not the same thing as microgrids. This evidence also only shadow extended. You should not call for the evidence or read into any warrants that were not extended. The 1AR, the intermittency argument again consumes that we plug into the grid. Also, we're not going for the gendered language argument. It's just concede it's not a voting issue. Censorship is not offense for them. Now the counterplan, none of the evidence they read, none of the evidence they read can deals with the question which is who removes the restrictions, not simply whether the restrictions are replaced. They only evidence they read about this and the two C's about net metering. Now the Parsley and Wiseman evidence says that the states don't solve ace of point states reinstate even progressive states decisions for local energy empirically change core states. Authority means localities won't engage or experiment. They don't get durable fiat. First, it's unique when we describe the process of how it goes down. Second, not with the state's counterplan, which is already utopia, means they destroy debate about process. Independent of that, our evidence says it's a question of perception. Even if durable fiat exists, actors won't perceive the act of fiat. Visa point is conglomeration, state of power over function over rules over groups, not ways of interest against the other. The name of politics. Visa point is lobbying. Power won't centralize energy interests, focus their attention on the state level. It's harder to disperse investment on local scales. There's a high threshold for solvency because the person who evidence says the very possibility deters the ability. They say rollback, not true. Person Wiseman led in the local control of land energy relations, false everything power Congress passed in the Congress clause height, some clear cause of the horseman doctrines, part and subtle the course of health federation to pass local governments take action. The state governments might wish to prohibit now just said. impact outweighs centralized energy, cause tangible physical, environmental, and psychological violence to low income and minority communities, citing systems unfairly single out marginalized communities to decimate their life flows. The specific impact that's more probable economics can't turn the case. It relies on trickle-down economics, i.e. their idea that a rising tide raises all ships. The model that we criticize also the way to not to decentralize solar. They concede solar inevitable, but they also have no evidence on this question. The plan also doesn't solve money. They say poverty. This does not turn the case because the impact is not about generic structural violence, but environmental justice specifically. Also, growth would increase inequality in this context because the internal link that they read is that they would use lower income workers for the purposes of big corporations. Yes, you do have to win uniqueness, otherwise you can't prove that we have a unique legal on CIR. Now, the complexity arguments also take it out, but the political capital actually etc. Kessler evidence we win complexity vote or really any defense because plausible low probability high impact risk makes decision making rational. Any observed risk ranges to infinity because it trades off with probable risk analysis as a conceded argument. That's Kessler. I'm not sure, but I think that they conceded intrinsicness that you can vote both for immigration and immigration and the act because there's a logical policymaker could be able to do both. Now, the political capital, the Klein-Hirsch evidence of political capital links to complexity. The president's not in control because of tons of other factors like media spinning, congressional vacuum, in this case, the balance of leadership. We cite data from the last 30 years of presidential leadership. Yes, political capital exists, which is what all their evidence says, and the president has influence, but that's not just the internal link question. They can't treat political capital like a piggy bank to be predicted by journalists, speculating the effects of energy policy. It's supported by also by our Hirsch evidence, which is from last month. They contextualized it to Obama, for example. A couple of examples for how that's true. For example, if political capital is finite, as their 2009 evidence says, then Obama should have run out of it a long time ago, especially with things like sequestration, gun, and gun control. Also, their focus link proves that anything could suck the oxygen out of there. There'll be future gun control debates. They punted on the continuing resolution. Also, the uniqueness evidence says immigration is imperative for the GDP because of Latinos and re-election. They have no evidence that, and it's illogical to assume that they'll throw it away because of energy policy. They can see the Washington Times evidence says negotiations are occurring in secret. That means political capital wouldn't be key. Also, the bill would current months. All these prove are example. They say the evidence that it's Klein just a search. It doesn't assume, have any data. Their sheer evidence says just assumes the context exists. Does not give any warrants. They say that they see a perception, but that's wrong. We're 11-12 in the context of Obama. As political science bond, Edward Slicer lied to abuse and control. They present critical cause marginal the legislative structure matches the partisan Congress and straight laws about more Obama and self-censorship. Seen the Rebuttal into Obama Victoria when Congress not particularly if you got a Congress sees political advantage. They can see the Nyan and sides evidence indicates that you should not do issue specific uniqueness because journalism is a snapshot of the status quo frame. Frames in terms of episodic events ignore structural regularities. The low point evidence, linear economic predictions fail. The economies of a complex system of multiple feedback loops, like the frame, the ancient system, trade system, developing countries picking isolated strands like tax hikes and physical health fails. They just read more internal link evidence. Doesn't seem to be indicting of their models. Economic models used to assume the past cannot be used to predict the future in nonlinear systems.
states, politics, the environmental justice flow.
Say that one more time.
States, politics, and environmental justice flow. On this.
It doesn't matter.
You said states,
Politics.
TJ.
Yeah.
Centralized injustice, sir.
I'm just going on what you told me, man.
Well, like, that's assuming that EJ is where you have the complexity debate.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Sorry to offend your sensibilities.
Is the ring good? Look, there's no coherence. All these evidence that are articulated to the counterclaim that is not addressed by our evidence or evidence indicates that states in the status quo are encouraging energy, which means it solves the entirety of the evidence first. They can see the durable fiat will solve their solvency. They were give no warrant for why you should uniquely get durable fiat in the affirmative. We said we needed to contest the fact that they actually remove state restrictions is important. Then also we should get the same fiat levels. We should get the same fiat levels. The affirmative, otherwise no chemical workings. It wouldn't be over because the act would be able to come strong. Be able to overcome structural legal harms that the counterclaim would not, which would render counterclaims unable. They have no good warrant for the sake of the perception argument. Argument indicates that states are supporting legislation in the status quo, which means that it solves their perception arguments. There's no reason that people will be scared of being rolled back if the states have empirically been showing there's no real warrant to this conglomeration of it. It's not conglomeration of it. Not exactly sure what it means. Like the fact that states are supporting decentralized supplies of solar power, the lobbying. It was also meaning since you don't have to have a high threshold for theory. When we have evidence of using embarrassing it's on status quo, the rollback argument, they don't really have a good answer to the rollback argument. There's a distinction. Our evidence is in the context of decentralized solar power indicates that states have restrictions in place, and the federal government intervening in those restrictions is probably a bad thing. Their evidence is not in the same context of decentralized solar power even, and it's also and it also says that it's also when their evidence also cites a court where the federal courts were upholding state regulation, not where they were overriding, which means the plaintiff would uniquely get rollback. The evidence as the answer right now. There's a couple conceded things on the theory by which I want you to remember when we go to the next flow. First of all, they're conceded negative flexibility should be the standard. Should be the standard to which you evaluate theory, and that education will come and the education was first, and the education was first, which means I answered transients at the link level. But even if you think I did not theoretically justify these, those should be the standards to which you identify theory. I'll get to that debate of politics now. If they're not answering the warrants for insurance case arguments, definitely happens because when the economy declines, the low income communities that they give solar power to are the first ones to go. This is definitely true. Their evidence also since the fact the investors will actually create look. The only way that these low income communities can actually get access to solar power is if it's true that investors will decrease the prices if the economy falls. Investors are going to continue on current trends to decrease the prices. Also, the growth impact makes total sense. If everyone's environmental life goes, if poverty is a structural issue in the status quo, then alleviating that is good. Then they're dropping the wage. Absolutely, because they're dropping the wage deflation and terminal link at the top, which means absent comprehensive immigration reform, wage deflation means that the economy will collapse, which means it can only be worse for things like poverty. It can only lead to a nuclear war. The complexity debate and why we should be allowed to make these predictions will be on the case. But one important thing to remember is there's no problem between the distinction made by the politicians and the distinction made by the affirmative. They say using lower income workers is not a reason we don't solve for the growth impact. We give people jobs and give them the ability to do things. They just make this assertion that corporations are a bad thing, but the corporations giving people jobs is not necessarily backing their the literary support for this kind of counter evidence is not nearly as good as the bolting evidence, which indicates that nuclear working is the only thing that can solve the one sweeping impact, which is why you should prioritize even a small risk of nuclear war over lots of structural bonds, because we can eventually get to another transistor argument. I definitely answer this by proving the links and explaining that the dissent is and transfer to the app. But even then, the one error does not do enough work on this, does not extend any words. Why even if it was not intrinsic, it would be abusive to them. The best education means that we should be able to talk about the politics, dissent, and current events, and also negative flexibility means we have to have this core generic and arsenal. Do not understand because of 3 second blip in the one error decline. Evidence is pretty bad. The Mandel evidence answers it back by saying it's just overly pessimistic. Does not take into account trends in pairs. We're allowed to take into account trends. All their evidence is severely under Affirmative does not have any sort of warranty. Sure, the warranty, her evidence says that political capital rests on the assumption that it is finite, but the sure evidence is pretty clear that political capital is definitively finite, and the perception argument is good because if political capital is perceived as finite, then it will definitely function that way. The Hearst evidence that is specific to Obama, the only reason it indexed political capital is it says it's not concrete, but we read evidence, the warrants of their Hearst evidence, they say that it would have run out already, but issue-specific uniqueness proves that it has not run out, does not disprove the theory of the argument. This is an analytical argument focus, meaning anything that does not take out the dissent, just strengthens the link to the counterclaim because he's, the link to the affirmative because he's focusing on immigration now, which means there's not the potential for anything else to credit out. Not the potential for anything else to credit out. The Washington Times also doesn't make any sense. It indicates that it's passing down. The reason it's passing down is because Obama is investing all his eggs in that basket. It means it's more specific evidence now. The evidence, evidence they say on the snapshot does not make any sense. Just as we have to take things into account in a broader context. That's obviously what we do. The economy predictions evidence does not apply anymore to the affirmative, which makes predictions about investor behavior, and the way the prices will behave in these tests. Also, I forgot to answer CIR is bad for structural balance. It's definitively not none. None of their authors are qualified at all in this space. Does not necessarily lead to structural balance. There's no reason they would be funded into the military and would definitely be better than the status quo because it's some sort of path to citizenship. Today, argument was not answer the complexity theory debate. We agree that there's some degree of uncertainty that conceding the code solve cases. Even if there are certainty, we have to make the predictions in order to have political debates. It does not mean you cannot find a stable basis for predictions, especially in the context of policymaking. Our still evidence is pretty good. Observational statements can render an explanation more probably. Say we need social science, but our evidence doesn't say that now. One insecurity evidence contextualizes the complexity of policymaking, which none of the evidence does. Drake and Ramadan are academics talking about high-level theory. Carney says policymakers can't view systems as irreducibly complex. We have limited resources and cognitive abilities to act. The reading of complexity theory is lazy. If they're interpreting actions, other factors play force them to articulate what they are. That certain Hendricks evidence, all impact stories can take that consistent with the impact. Uses social analysis of actors that respond to crises identified the Harris and Burroughs evidence as economic collapse, danger state, and not state after nuclear arsenal. The existential impacts of way our offense was on the dissent. That's the building out 70 and also no threshold between their predictions and our predictions means we're highly skeptical of this argument.
5:18.
substantive answer to the app in the 2NR, and they have no evidence that explicitly says that extinction outweighs. If we win a solvency down to the counterclaim, that means we win the debate. Go to the counterclaim. The counterclaim maintains state authority over social side intervening, which means it does not solve. We have the only evidence that is explicitly comparative between state and federal removal of social side restrictions. They have severely underestimated the quality of this evidence, and they will lose for it. Extend the personal life and state control over social siding makes the implementation regime on stable localities will be less likely to experiment with decentralized solar power because they fear future state preemption. States have a history of reversing progressive energy decision means that there's not a legacy of trust between communities and the state. They perceive that corporations focus their lobbying efforts at the state level and are unwilling to change their lifestyles because of the chance that the states could reverse the decision. It's a question of the authority. Our evidence uses the language of possibility to describe the chilling effect the localities feel, which proves that the counterplan is insufficient to solve the app. Even if the app is durable, communities do not perceive that it is. Even if they win, that they solve some of the app, they don't solve enough to access the impact because our virtue evidence says that it's necessary for local experience to be integrated into energy land use decision-making processes, which means that any chilling effect on communities' ability to cooperate means the terminal impact to the outways. They say that states are encouraging energy. They're not including things like they're not encouraging community solar, and it's also relevant because of the quality, and that's also not relevant to arguments like the chilling effect. They say that structural and legal norms apply. No federal government passage solves our evidence comparisons. I'm also not sure what legal barriers she's talking about. She says that it'll be rolled back. Our evidence is from the same article that advocates the plan tax and says it falls squarely under Congress's Commerce Clause powers, which means that their evidence about past Supreme Court decision making does not apply. Now the politics is set. The impact of the FOAs extend the Beals evidence. Decentralized solar addresses the ongoing devastation to minority and poor communities. For example, decreasing energy costs and replacing the fossil fuel energy sources causes cancer and respiratory disease. The structural lines of energy injustice outweighs the one-shot risk of their extend Virchik, Nixon, and Hedrick. One is that risk calculus focused on high magnitude. One unlikely threats reflects irrationality and privilege. People will systematically ignore and underestimate mundane dangers like asthma caused by a coal plant while overestimating the risk of spectacular scenarios like economic decline causing nuclear war. Second is their catastrophic impact. This is not objective but reflects their social location and value judgments. It's easy to dismiss the impact of asthma or drinking poisoned water when you have the privilege to breathe clean air and live on soil uncontaminated by chemical waste. 3, only prioritizing the local knowledge remedies the systemic skew in their risk calculus. Unless the oppressed local communities are included in the decisions that affect their lives, powerful will always sideline their interest through appeals to objectivity and the quote-unquote greater good. 4 is that discrimination predates disaster. Visible signs of catastrophe emerge from ongoing patterns of oppression that bubble up in unpredictable ways. Focus on isolated scenarios for extinction is dissociative thinking. It's like worrying about a plane crash while lighting another cigarette. Prefer specificity or evidence comparative between environmental injustice and extinction in terms of policy-making risk assessment. Their evidence does not come close to this. Their evidence also cannot access the impact of the app. Our impact is not structural violence or poverty in the abstract is bad, but rather environmental justice in the United States. Also, they see the gross solves poverty. This does not answer that. This does not solve citing decisions that are made based on race. Numerous studies prove that this is the case because those individuals have less political representation and recourse to access. Also, it's just true that economic growth in the past 5 years has increased income inequality. Corporations experience growth while the most impoverished get poorer. It's especially true in the context of the internally because it's based on companies requiring more cheap labor from places like Mexico. This does nothing for low-income communities of people who are already living in the United States. The next argument she makes is that is a 1% risk type argument. She's conceded the Kessler evidence, which means that if we win any defense to the disadvantage takes out the entirety of the DA because privileging magnitude over probability breaks down risk management. Even the highest degree of probability comes relevant concern, which causes a bad foreign politics. The idea that the impact of nuclear war is so bad that it deserves its method of evaluation causes things like the 1% doctrine and intervention in places that are correct. That is the Kessler reference. They say that war turns structural line specificity takes it out. There's no reason why war would increase or shift the way the corporation make energy siting decisions to target vulnerable communities. Now, the decide is not intrinsic. It's within the agential ambit of a logical policymakers both vote for the plan and for immigration reform. Their link arguments obviously don't answer this because it's a theoretical argument about the role of the judges and decision makers. She said that the 1 hour didn't spend a lot of time on this. Yes, because you conceded it. She cross-applies negative flexibility, but it does not have an impact to this argument or a bright line for how much negative flexibility is necessary. You have plenty of other specific disads like energy prices, renewable or rare earth metals disads with natural gas disads, etc., which are all probably better for education about the topic than the politics TA. Now, the political capital debate, they will win that the president has substantial influence in policy making from things like rallying his party or threatening a veto or setting the agenda, etc., which is what the vast majority of their evidence in the context of, but not that political capital is a determinant of legislative success, or there can be trade-off between two different pieces of legislation. The concept of political capital is is one that's treated by pundits for good TV. The political process is not a banking model of concrete capital that can't be deposited and withdrawn. If it exists, it's only in the way that one can say Obama does or does not have it, and if that he is being successful getting his agenda or not, but certainly not in the context that the DA seems to CAR will have enough support now, but the passage of the plan causes decline enough of legislative rebuttal. Their evidence proves our argument. Republicans are willing to compromise because of increased public support and the need for the Latino vote, which is not in the context of political capital. Additionally, examples of healthcare and stimulus also prove this argument. They were attempted at the beginning of Obama's term when he had massive political capital pushing forward at all costs. The fact that these debates took months and months of negotiation proves the interest of individual legislators and party ideology outweighs. I don't also think she answers the argument that sequestration and gun control takes out the poll cap finite argument. It's true that each piece of legislation costs capital that trades off, then he should have none left for CAR, especially because the act would not require any new spending on renewables, instead remove state power, which Republicans would like. None of their evidence as soon as this argument proves it's not a trade-off with the same constituents. I also, their shower remainder Mandela is not responsible to the presidents have political capital. They have influence just like the same you have influence. You have influence also be conceded that you should prefer structural claims over their journalism because our evidence cites data. Journalism takes episodes of snapshots of the status quo and hypes them for readers that deny hidden sides evidence.